Game over for Shifty Shift and Letitia James and Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis? It could very well be game over if Donald Trump is successful. I mean, this woman, she made it really, really clear that she was running on one thing. Remember her?
I've taken on powerful interests like developers. I've taken on legislators. I've taken on landlords. I've taken on powerful interests in the city of New York because I believe in a good fight. And right now, what we need is someone who understands that you should not be afraid, not be fearful of Donald Trump. We should take him down. We should sue him all the way to bankruptcy. We should investigate his business interests. We should investigate his business holdings. We should investigate whether or not why he was once in debt and now in a position to purchase all of this property. We can do that because I've been trained to do that, and I will do that at the same time knowing the Office of Attorney General and its powers and its responsibilities and its duties. My name is Letitia James, and I plan on being the next Attorney General of the state of New York. God bless you and thank you.
My gosh. Wow. I mean, putting it all out there. Telling us exactly what her plan was. And now it's about to get reversed. It's about to get reversed, and I think a few other things are about to get reversed. I mean, you look at the news today, for example, Nathan Wade. It turns out, he was having all these meetings with the White House. That has now come out, despite the fact that Merrick Garland tried to avoid that question when he was asked about a year ago by Matt Gaetz about that very thing. Somehow it's a conspiracy to think that, they might all just actually be working together in a form of collusion with the federal government. Donald Trump was asked about this because there's this sense of you got to go back after them, right? This thing with Letitia James is going to get thrown out of court. And here's how I know. Just watch the tape. Humor me. I know I've played this before, but this is how we know. And it's coming down to sometime within the next 7 to 10 days here. Handwriting's on the wall. Here she is. Well, rather her stand-in, Judith Vale, trying to argue this case before the appellate judge of the New York Court of Appeals. And they're laughing her out of court.
It was using...
I'm sorry, but what's being described sounds an awful lot like a potential commercial dispute between private actors.
Well, to go back to the first question about whether there's other examples of this, there are other examples of this. In the First American case, the Attorney General brought a 6312 case where the transaction at issue was between a very big bank, Wells Fargo, and a professional appraisal firm.
But it wasn't the concern there that the public would ultimately be negatively impacted and affected by what those corporate actors were doing.
And that concern is here as well, because when you have hidden risks getting injected into the market, that hurts the market.
Okay, so it doesn't make much sense, only because in this case, she's trying to argue that somehow there's a big public market that he was influencing, as opposed to it being a private transaction between an individual and his bank. And by the way, the bank itself, that would be Deutsche Bank, got paid back in full with interest, so everybody was happy. So there's no victim. And normally in these crimes, you kind of have victims, something that nearly got her laughed out of court within the first 5 minutes.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated...
Ms. Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners, where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Well, several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Yeah, I think the odds are kind of stacked against Ms. Judith Vale representing Letitia James there. Letitia way out over her skis trying to concoct something out of nothing. But this is the world in which we live, right? You've got For example, Kamala Harris saying, hey, she's all ready to lock the guy up. Well, not exactly. The courts are ready to lock him up. This is her here just within the last 24 hours.
Because some people find it humorous what he says and think it's just silly, but understand how brutally serious it is. Well, the courts will take care of that. We'll take care of November. Yes. We'll take care of November. But it is brutally serious because to the Congresswoman's point,
what is that?
Anyone who has openly said, as he has, that he would terminate the Constitution of the United States.
Okay, he hasn't said that. So again, this all gets so out of whack, and nobody holds any of these people accountable. I mean, this is the woman, by the way, who's now accused of plagiarizing large amounts of testimony from a Republican, mind you. So you've got all these people that have engaged in this really strategic warfare and are continuing a form of warfare, lawfare, and they're sort of threatening to continue on with that. And that's why this is such a big deal. Donald Trump was asked by Howie Kurtz about whether or not he was going to fire back at these people like Letitia. And, he was very, frankly, if you ask me, very sort of thoughtful about this. I know he is thoughtful about this because he's told me the reasons why he didn't go after Hillary Clinton. But here he is talking about the idea of retribution.
I think they're unethical, but who knows?
I want to drill down on this question of retribution because against your political opponents, because you've had opportunities to walk that back. And my question is this: are you prepared to say now that you will not use law enforcement to punish or prosecute your political opponents?
Excuse me. That's what they're using on me.
Okay, so your stance is that they started
before you start this.
Yeah, I got it.
Howie, that's what they're using on me. I've got DAs, I've got everybody. They look at me. There's never been anything like this. The biggest case was the one down in Florida, and I beat it 100%. I won the case because we had number one, a brilliant judge and a judge that moved rather rapidly, and I won the case. By the way, Biden had almost the same case, but he didn't have the Presidential Records Act because he wasn't the president, just to finish. And he got off on the basis that he's incompetent, essentially that he's incompetent. And it was a strange ruling because they said, number one, he's incompetent, so he's not going to be good. But the prosecutor actually said he's guilty, but he's incompetent. But they didn't say he couldn't be president anymore. That was his bigger problem for not being president. How can you not represent yourself in court because you're incompetent, but you're allowed to represent the United States of America? The whole thing is crazy. But no, they have weaponized government against me.
But are you willing to use the same tactics?
No, I don't want to do that because that's a bad thing for the country. I don't want to do that. I don't know who said. I haven't said that I would, but they have done it. I've got attorney generals, DAs. They're all right. You take a look in Atlanta.
You're heavily investigated. Yeah,
they went and met with them. It's all coming out of the Justice Department. They have done something never done in this country before. Now, it's been done in a lot of other countries, third world countries, banana republics, but never done. So when you ask that question, you really have to start by saying, well, they've done it to you. No, I'm not looking to do it to them at all, because that is they have set a very bad precedent, however.
You talk about the enemy.
Yeah. Listen, this is really, really important. And then he goes on to say, hey, what about the enemy within? And I think this is worth hearing too, because Shifty Schiff comes up. In other words, Adam Schiff, who made a lot of allegations. Let's listen.
You talk about the enemy within. There's enemies, America's enemies outside. The enemy within is a pretty ominous phrase if you're talking about other Americans.
I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate.
Who are you talking about?
And,
the enemy?
I heard that. They say, oh, the enemy. On the outside, you have Russia, you have China, you have a lot of different groups. If you have a smart president, they can be easily handled. I handled them. We had no wars. We had no wars. The only thing I had was ISIS, and I defeated them in record time. They were gone. But I started no wars. The outside people, the so-called enemies, if they're enemies, and they might not be enemies, if you have a smart president, they can be handled. But when you have people investigating my campaign, when you have people, they spied on my campaign, Howie. You understand that. That's been proven. But They spy on your campaign. The Russia hoax was all made up, and now it's acknowledged that it was made up. All of these different things. You have the 51 different agents saying it was from Russia, and now they all say it wasn't from Russia. Okay, so we were lying. Many other things, many. I could go. You just don't have enough time. But what they've done is so terrible. Who's ever heard of anything like this? Adam Shifty Schiff, he's a crooked guy. He's a crooked politician, 100%. And he's going to be a senator now. Can you believe it?
But again, he's a political opponent of yours.
He's not.
An enemy.
No, of course he's an enemy. He's an enemy. He wanted to put my son in jail, and my son didn't even know what he was talking about. He wanted to put my son in jail on a scam that he made up called Russia. He, Hillary Clinton, and a group of people made up a scam. And they came out of a room and they said, Donald Trump Jr. will be going to jail over this. And my son called me, he said, what did I do? He knew nothing about Russia. It had nothing to do with him. Think of how bad you have to be when you say you're going to put any son, not just, a president's son, but any son, you're going to put somebody in jail on a scam that you knew was made up by you. That's an enemy from within. That is a threat to democracy. These are bad people. We have a lot of bad people.
He's not wrong on that. But what's important and should not be lost in this is that he's not saying he's going to go after them in the same way that they went after him. And, he had the opportunity to do that before, and he didn't take that. So it's all about, remember Michelle Obama saying, when they go low, we go high? Like, they keep going lower and lower and lower. And here he is saying, I'm not actually going to have retribution. I do think that Letitia James runs the risk for sure of facing disbarment. You have at present, Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from New York, who is, one smart cookie and actually took Claudine Gay down. That would be the president of Harvard University. She's demanding right now that the professional committee review one Letitia James because of this rabid political bent that Letitia had. So you have that going on. You have the news out today that Nathan Wade admitted to multiple meetings with White House personnel, despite Garland trying to poo-poo all of that, and everybody's saying, somehow that's just a conspiracy theory if you think that the White House and the Biden-Harris administration had anything to do with all of these legal cases against him. There's a lot there. And then Alvin Bragg, who, by the way, in the beginning didn't even want to bring his case with the whole Stormy Daniels thing against Donald Trump forward, having to have done that. So one wonders how much of this was orchestrated, so to speak, from on top, and what the penalty, if you would be for all of that, investigations, et cetera. I mean, I think everybody just kind of wants to get clear of all this, right? It's going to be a crazy couple of months.